Hey everyone, it's Elysabeth Alfano with the Plant-Based Business Hour. I am so happy to have you with me today. As a gentle reminder, the Plant-Based Business Hour is every Tuesday and Thursday, so you can always find us live on the internet. And then today we're going to be taping for a radio show, which is so very exciting. So today you're going to hear me say things like, oh gosh, we're going to commercial break, but of course we're not really going to commercial break, or here's the news. And of course we're not going to the news either. So wish me luck as we do this as a pre-tape today for a radio show. As I said, we are every Tuesday and Thursday on my LinkedIn page, on the Jay and Unchained News Network, on Twitter, and then later on the Plant-Based Business Hour podcast. So always be sure to subscribe to the podcast. And of course, we are all over socials like on LinkedIn and Facebook, etc. So here we go, folks, for today's radio show. I have an incredible guest for you. So very exciting. Hey everyone, it's Elysabeth Alfano. Welcome to the Plant-Based Business Hour, where we discuss all things going on in plant-based business with the leaders who are making a difference. Ultimately, if we want a safe and secure future, we need a safe and secure food supply, and that's plant-based foods. And we know that a lot of people, whether they are vegan, plant-based, flexitarian, or not, are starting to see the dollar signs on the wall. As we go from 7 billion people on the planet to 10 billion people, we're going to need a much more efficient food supply system. So that means that many entrepreneurs are hopping into the space. How can they bring a plant-based product to the marketplace? So what do they want? They want to be successful right out of the gate. In fact, perhaps they maybe even want to start a craze. You remember the fitness craze. In fact, I think we're sort of still in it. The protein craze, we're still in that as well. What about the oat milk craze? That's right. We're going to talk to we're going to talk to founder of Oatly, Bjorn Oste, and he's also the CEO and founder of Good Idea Drinks. So I really want to talk to him to hear what he is up to with his new company. But before we do that, let's break for news. Oh, I love to read the news. It's always so fun and exciting. But talking about exciting, let me bring in Bjorn, who's the founder of Oatly and the founder and CEO of Good Idea Drinks. Bjorn, thanks for being with me today.
Thank you, Elysabeth. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So I'll just say off the bat, I'm just so grateful for all that you've done. I think people think, oh, Oatly, it just popped up a couple of years ago and they just started and they're an overnight success. Let's give them the real facts, shall we? When exactly did Oatly start and how did you turn it around to make an oat milk craze?
Well, yeah, we hear that a lot, right? The overnight success story. We are, in fact, 20-year overnight success story now in the making. The brand Oatly was launched in 2001, and my brother, who is the true innovator and the real hero here, he started tinkering with making milk from oats as late as in the 1980s, but he filed his first patents in 94, 95, and formed the first company in 1995. So at that time, of course, I was in the IT industry at the time, and I was looking at him, and we were all the mad scientists. We were all shaking our heads. But then it really had something in it. We tasted it, we loved it. It was a great product. You felt like there's something in this. And so I joined him, a chance to join and invest with him in 1997. And at that time, we really didn't know what to do with that product. We started an ingredient play, anyway, that's a couple of years of agony and trying to figure out what was up and what was down and how to get this to the consumers and what to call it and what to use it for. But in 2001, we learned our lessons and decided to go all in on building our global brand and go after the dairy industry, quite simply. And, that's it. As simple as that.
Everybody, that's it. There's nothing to it. 25 years in, well, because you were doing all this R&D in the 90s, although you say that you started in 2001. So give or take about 20 years in, there's nothing to it. But at some point, it seems that you decided to switch the rationale from, hey, we've got a great product. We're going to talk about that in a second, all the health benefits to something like oat milk. We've got a great product, but maybe we also need to focus on marketing. And I think it's at that point, and probably also scalability. And when you were able to get supply to more than just the Nordic countries, you are from Sweden. It is a very Swedish brand and very proud of it. And hopefully the government of Sweden is very grateful to you because you're co-promoting Sweden always at the same time. But probably something had to do with scalability, but also about your marketing. Can you talk to all the campaigns that we see on buses and benches?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think what we were struggling with in the beginning, we launched a product that nobody knew of and nobody had ever heard of, and that's always tough, right? It's easier to come with products that are fitting into existing categories, and you could argue, yeah, well, in the early 2000s, the soy milk started to get big in the US and started really that sort of transformation of the dairy or plant-based dairy industry. But that hadn't happened in Europe yet. Europe is behind, or was behind at that point. We had to have an approach that was very medical. We tried to, and then another perspective too, right? That the dairy consumption in Sweden is actually higher than in the US per capita, and the prevalence of lactose intolerance is lower. So you're in a country where dairy is truly ruling. It's the king, and do not mess with my milk, right? Do whatever you want, don't mess with my milk. So that's the sort of environment we had to start. And when you do that, the approach we picked was to be a very medical. We promoted heavily the Oatly's properties of reducing cholesterol. And in fact, it was one of the design properties when my brother was tinkering with the oat milk, was to ensure that it not only maintained the inherent natural properties in oats, but in fact, improve them and optimize them, right? So we started very early on doing clinical studies at the time when the world had never heard of startups doing food products that did clinical studies, right? We had a very medical sort of technical promotional strategy, and we looked at, of course, milk protein, families with milk protein allergic children, for example, was a big important group. And I think that strategy worked for a few years, where we had a real functional solution to, or a practical solution to a real problem. But come up when we owned that market, quote unquote, and I think we internally had struggled with we hired a CEO, we had marketing people, we had all the top executives came from the food industry. And I think it's a really interesting lesson here. So in the mid-2000s, the food industry really did not know much about marketing and consumer branding, other than putting pretty stickers on pretty packages, right? And trying to be cool that way. But with the new millennial generation coming up, they couldn't care less if it was a pretty sticker on a carton, right? It started to get into more of a lifestyle brand demand. Patagonia came and started setting the norms, I guess, here, that the brand and a product and a company can be so much more than a physical product in a pretty box. And that was a big challenge for us. So in 2012, we hired our new CEO, the Tony, that he's really the rock star and the super champion here in terms of turning the market. He understood. I guess my contribution is that I hired him, right? So I take claim for that. But what he really brought to the party was a completely new view on how to reach consumers. And he'd learned that the hard way from building restaurants and cafes and working the floor every day and interviewing consumers, and he learned. When you talk to him, and his early days that formed him was when he realized that you can never ask a consumer what they want. You're toast. If that's what you do, and still today, most of the market research is all about that. What do you want? Green or blue? If you ask a consumer what they want, you're by definition always behind, because the real winner is the one that gives the consumer what they didn't know they wanted. And then make them realize that, oh my God, this is what I want.
I love this perspective, but I'm surprised to hear it because so much marketing is based on consumer research of give the product what they want.
It's
Give the consumer what they want.
99% of all consumer research is a waste of time. And the reason why there's so much money spent on consumer research is that the big food companies have their hierarchical structure and career paths where nobody dares make any independent decisions. You buy data points to back any decision, right? Which is a completely flawed model. And it's easy to say. I mean, it worked well for them for 50 years, right? But it certainly is not working now. And that's why you're hard pressed to find any true innovation coming out of any big company. It all comes out of small companies where you dare do things that no one in a big company can do. So here I'm giving away all the secrets to success, but it sounds easy. It's really, really not easy to do. And I think Tony's big success here is that he managed to build a team of really breakthrough marketeers around him and people that came from the traditional, Madison Avenue type industry. But I think a lot of frustration among the really creative talents out there is that they work for these big corporations that don't get it. And they come up with these crazy, groundbreaking marketing whiz ideas, but they get they only see their clients botching it all up, right? At the end of the day. So actually, you start seeing a lot of the a lot of the super talented now are switching over to the client side and actually start working, building brands and being part of living, eating, breathing, being a brand, right?
Mm-hmm. I actually see that a lot. I see, because I do a lot of interviews here, and I see people who've left big corporate America, or particularly in the ad space. They feel that they were hindered, maybe depending on this consumer research, and they're going for these smaller, particularly plant-based brands where they get to be mission aligned, but they also get to be super creative. One of your sort of famed quotes, I'll say, is that inflexibility is the killer of creativity. And I think you're talking to CEOs when you say that. It kills me to go to break now, but we are going to go to break and we're going to talk about how engaging your marketing campaigns are. And we're also going to get into those health benefits because you are nutritionally very motivated and you have some big objectives there too. So we'll talk about that with your new company. We'll be right back after break. It's the Plant-Based Business Hour with Elysabeth Alfano. Thanks, everybody, for your patience today as we do a pre-tape for radio. We're going to get going because we have no commercials, but I do appreciate having Bjorn here with me today. And we're going to pick up on nutrition, lots of good nutrition with oat milk. Here we go. It's a Plant-Based Business Hour with Elysabeth Alfano. I'm so happy to be back with you, but even better than that is that I am with the founder of Oatly, Bjorn Oste. He's also the founder and CEO of his newest company, Good Idea Drinks. Okay, so we were talking before about creative marketing and how you've basically upended everything and said, don't pay attention to consumer research. And it's funny because we're living in this time where everything we thought we knew is just not applying. I take that from the very global scale of COVID all the way down to now how we're doing business, obviously how we're eating as well, how we're feeding the planet, how we're taking care of ourselves and our healthcare system. But you're actually taking it down to how we do business and everything's got to change. I couldn't agree with that more. You personally have been very driven by nutrition. Your co-founder and also brother, Ricard, is a nutrition expert, and he's the one who really started on Oatly with all of its nutrition properties. In the US, I'll say 65% of Americans are lactose intolerant. That's much higher in the African American communities and much higher in the Asian American communities. From I've got a JPEG here that I do want to show everyone and read them about the benefits of plant-based milk, specifically oat milk. So it's obviously dairy-free, so it helps anyone with allergens, lactose intolerance, I should say. It's high in fiber. So I didn't realize this myself, but it's high in fiber and doesn't have saturated fats. Of course, meat and dairy don't have any fiber, and they do have saturated fats. And then I just want to bring one more JPEG here to the forefront, and then I'll let Bjorn take it away. Cholesterol free, of course, we did know that, and regulates blood sugar levels. Okay, I'm coming back to Bjorn so that he can talk to us a little bit about that. That seems to be something that is a theme for you about regulating blood sugar levels?
So yeah, we I think so. My brother is a professor in food chemistry at the University of Lund, and he spent his entire life academically looking at food and nutrition and health, right? So it was very logical for him when he started developing oat milk to look at the health benefits of oats and optimize them, as I mentioned earlier. And we started doing very early on doing clinical research and clinical trials on oat milk, and could actually prove that Oatly, in fact, is extremely potent at reducing cholesterol. Not necessarily put on all cartons today, but it's a fact. And I think what happened was that we saw then opportunity in what is today called food tech, but really applying deep science in food and trying to optimize inherent health benefits with foods to address really pressing health concerns. And the oat avenue led us into what we talk about, the metabolic syndrome, right? Obesity, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, etc., and high blood pressure is in there. These are diseases, conditions that are extremely prevalent. Over what do we talk about? 60% of the U.S. population, right?
Yes.
And I got a technical failure with my headset. 2 seconds.
Great. While you're fixing your technical failure, I'll say tilt your camera just a teeny bit down. Just a teeny bit so that we get, oh, great. Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay.
Stand in the middle here. It's hard with the lighting here, I realized. They're going to fix that for the next interview. But anyway.
So you're coming back. That's what you're saying.
Right. So I'll let your listeners decide if they want me back. But
we do.
Yeah, right. What happened here is that we started separate research projects in parallel with building Oatly and looking at what else can be addressed with food and smartness and packaging it in consumable, great tasting products. Taste is all. We always lead with taste. Taste is king. If it doesn't taste great, forget it, right?
What's the point?
And so we actually, in 2008, we formed a food tech lab called The Venture, where we play around with innovations and look at new ways, new approaches to address particularly the metabolic syndrome. And oats is, as you referenced there are aspects of oats that hasn't been researched in depth yet, but we're more and more looking into, which is about blood sugar regulation. When you have a research team and you look at a specific narrow area, and there's always exciting stuff going around right next to you, right in the room right next door. And should we, if we feel like we have a competence that fits, should we not look at that too? When we felt that we shouldn't confine our scientists in the world of oats alone, and we should actually let them have a much broader perspective. And that also led to why we separated that team from Oatly altogether. And it's my brother's and my private little skunk work lab where we have fun, right? And it's not so little today. We have research centers in Hong Kong and in Sweden, and we have 30 people, several professors and 12 PhDs at last count. So a very, very highly motivated and extremely skilled multidisciplinary team that looks at proteins and enzymes and food processing and carbohydrates and molecular, cell structures and whatnot. And we're really, I think, in many of the research areas, we are absolutely in the forefront of what's possible today. And in that process, we came up with a conclusion of mixing amino acids with minerals and proving that actually gives a phenomenal blood sugar reduction when you drink it with your food. The response will go down 25-30%, regardless of what you eat. And it's really a smart way of mimicking how the body really works and giving it the tools to optimize that functionality. So amino acids, this particular blend and the particular concentration that we have patented, it helps clearly to trigger an early insulin release in the body. So you prime your system while you eat food. It cuts ahead of the line and start processing the blood sugar. Processing the carbohydrates. early, and adding the right mix of minerals improves the insulin sensitivity. This is all, maybe mumbo jumbo, but the
Well,
bottom line.
let me summarize a little bit what you're talking about, because I want people to be able to follow us. So you're talking right now, we've kind of switched over from Oatly to Good Idea drinks. And
Right.
you're talking about how here we've got a nice graphic that says, let me move this out of the way. So you've added amino acids and chromium. So if you look at this label here, it still has 0 calories and it's a carbonated water drink, but it has amino acids and chromium. And I guess what I'm hearing you say is that this combination, when eaten, when drunk before you eat or with a meal, helps to eliminate blood sugar spikes, and that's so important for people with diabetes and also people managing their diet. And these are chronic lifestyle diseases that we have in the United States. So something very needed. Have I summarized that correctly?
Yes, absolutely right. So let me add to that what you said. It's not necessarily eliminating spikes, but we're reducing blood sugar uptake 25-30%, which is, if you are a type 2 diabetic, that's typically what some of the leading pharmaceuticals would do for you, right? Now, this product is not for diabetics, right? It's not a pharmaceutical, and it's not FDA approved in that sense. So I can't sell it to diabetics. They may try it at their own, willingness, and it's just food anyway. So it's totally harmless, and nobody can overconsume anything here.
We're going to head to break. Hold
Yeah.
on. We're just going to head to break 1 second, and we're coming back to talk about food as medicine. It's a Plant-Based Business Hour. We'll be right back. Thanks for your patience, everybody. It kills me to have to cut you off like that. We're going to get right back into it. Picking up with food as medicine. I just love all the creativity going on here. I want to talk about how you work with doctors too. So very exciting. It's a Plant-Based Business Hour with Elysabeth Alfano. Thanks for being with me, founder of Oatly, Bjorn Oste, and the founder and CEO of Good Idea Drinks. We were talking right before the break about food as medicine in a way. If the pharmaceutical industry and the pharmaceutical lobby is powerful and strong, but what if we were to change our diets and start being more mindful about what we eat? So we think of food as medicine. And sometimes that means just not eating the bad stuff, but sometimes that means putting in more of the good stuff. So Oatly, we were talking about before the break, is much better for you than regular milk. It has fiber. It doesn't have saturated fat, doesn't have cholesterol, but maybe you can even go one step further. So you have Good Idea Drinks, which is a 0-calorie drink, but you're adding in some amino acids and some chromium to help you with blood sugar spikes. So how has it been to work with doctors with this kind of product? Do they get it? Are they on board?
So nutritionists and doctors typically get it very quickly because they understand the importance. And again, to be clear here, we're not targeting people that have a condition, right? But we are targeting people that are in the risk zone of developing a condition. So pre-diabetics, there's only 90 million of them in the US. It's not exactly a small niche, right?
Right.
But the benefit of regulating blood sugar is actually good for anyone. It keeps you awake after lunch, stay focused longer, helps you regulate, manage weight better, etc., right? So the benefit of a better balanced blood sugar is indisputably good for anyone. Doctors know this, nutritionists know this. And they're preaching it. The challenge here is, of course, how we explain this to the broader audience again, because it is kind of a medical and it's not easy as a marketeer selling a product that that give you promises on a health you will not risk. Well, you reduce the risk of developing diabetes if you drink this over time. We're all looking for immediate fixes and immediate sort of, so the immediate response from drinking Good Idea with lunch is that you don't feel tired after lunch. But the medical community, to your point, they get the idea, and their first question, first they will typically say, "Oh, that's great. We should really, provide this to our audiences." The next question is, of course, well, is it true? Does it work? And how does it work? And why does it work? And what's the magic potion in here, right? And that's why we have done to date 9 clinical studies. I say 9, to getting FDA approvals for health claims, you typically don't need that many, and they're done in several parts of the world, and are done by third parties. And they're, the largest one was done here in the U.S. and in Canada by a third party, and that proved 25-30% reduction, which is quite significant. Yeah, it's quite significant. So once you have that proof behind you, right, we typically get the community behind us. And the active ingredients are, just to round off on that one, are essential, meaning you have to have them in your daily diet. The amino acids are the 5 essential amino acids you have to eat every day. And chromium is an essential mineral that you have to have in your daily diet too. So it becomes a question of what's the bioavailability, what format do we deliver them to you, in what quantity, and etc. And that's sort of the secrets or the magic in our product, that we give you actually relatively small amounts. So you can't really overdose, right? And it's highly bioavailable, and therefore it really launches your body into this metabolic process that's so beneficial for you.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you about this. So much about nutrition is about education. And I will start with the doctors. They don't get any education. Most doctors get about 4 hours maximum. That's out of 4 years of all medical school. They get about 4 hours of nutrition. So, the poor consumer, we don't even expect the doctors to have nutritional information. Then obviously the consumer is bombarded with so many things that are confusing, perhaps actually not true. Even in some cases, milk does a body good. I believe that campaign was pulled with a lawsuit because milk doesn't do a body good. So, the poor consumer, how can they make heads or tails of this? The one thing that worries me is, or I should say, I bring up the question to you, is this quick fix that we all want so badly. It kind of circumvents the need to actually educate oneself and advocate for one's own health by understanding really what's going on. And that maybe it's don't eat the hot dog and the French fries and the chips and the candy, and then you won't have the spikes that you need. I mean, that's asking a lot of the consumer, I think, at this point, but I wondered about your feelings about that.
Yeah, it's a big problem. And I think, unfortunately, we have had too lax regulation for too long, in some sense, that there's too many snake oil manufacturers out there that are tooting the horn, and consumers are so desperate for easy solutions that anyone that has a sleek presentation and gets a message across can easily create a trend, a wave, and we can all look back at. I mean, we can all, if you sit down and have a conversation about it, we can probably easily identify 10 trends over the last 10 years that all became hysterically big and then disappeared, right? And there's no doubt there's a big challenge here. And who am I to trust ultimately at the end of the day, right? And I sit here and say that we've done 9 clinical studies. Well, I can go online and look at dietary supplements that claim they have lots of dietaries, the clinical studies, and lots of doctors with fancy titles from the best schools supporting it, and it's still, true scientists would know it's bogus. So it is a challenge. Ultimately, the proof is in the pudding, and over time, what are the active ingredients? Are they natural? Are they really real? Have people consumed them before in the past, and do they actually show results? And if they do, to the extent they do, they will survive over time.
That's maybe a good segue for me to ask you then, and I'll shift back to plant-based milks. I know we've been talking about your carbonated, 0-calorie, I will add, good idea drinks, but we'll shift back to plant-based dairy. What kind of predictions do you have for the plant-based dairy market? And then I'd love to know your predictions for the fizzy water market. I mean, the beverage market itself is such an incredible market, $400 billion in the global category, and then $700 billion for regular milk dairy. What are your predictions for the plant-based sector in milks?
I think the category, the industry has all the signs of continue to grow for the next couple of years in quite big numbers too, right? I think we really only seen the beginning of the transition here, and I mean, you look at Gen Zs. When I came home from school, as I was a kid, I would go to the fridge and I would open it and I'll down a carton of milk, just like that, right?
Like you mean like from the fridge, like no glass? You just
standing, the fridge door open, I'll just down it.
We know it well. Everyone does the same.
Yeah. Right. Well, look at your 16, 17-year-olds today. They don't do that. But ever so often they down a carton of oat milk or whatever, right? And so I would say the dairy industry has more or less effectively lost Generation Z.
Yes, I would agree.
They're done. It's a lost case for the dairy industry. And they're beginning to realize, some have realized it earlier, but it's beginning to become clear that the young generation is not drinking milk. It's the post-milk generation, as Oatley proudly call it, right? Mm-hmm. And it's true. It really is true. And we see that across Europe. We see it in Asia. We see it in Australia and all strong dairy cultures. So I think it's really hard for the dairy industry to take that back. So it's just the clock is ticking. Every year is going to get worse for them. Every year is going to get worse. And there's really very little sign that there should be some miracle cure. Certainly not by banning the plant-based dairy industry to call their products for milk. That will do absolutely diddly nothing. They've already lost that battle, right? Yeah. Because the consumers already call it milk.
Yes, that's just insulting to the consumer also. It basically says you can't read and you're an idiot. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the dying dinosaur's last desperate move to how can I stop this? Outlaw the term milk from oat milk.
And they look desperate. I think it makes them look bad, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, my heart goes out to the family-owned farmers, though, because they are kind of innocent victims here, right? They have invested their life and time in building dairy farms, thinking they're doing the good thing, just to be caught up in a big industry scheme that's been playing them and getting government subsidies. And I mean, there's a lot of dairy farmers that are not feeling well right now. And you know what? It's not necessarily their fault either, right? So I'm very... we can help some of them to plant oats instead. In fact, Oatley is doing that in Iowa and in Minnesota right now, which is very, very cool. Reintroducing oats as a plant in areas where oats was a common crop 3 generations ago, but it's been completely wiped out by corn and soy. I just drove through there this summer. It's pathetic. Corn and soy, monoculture galore, right? It's just such an environmental disaster. But that's a whole different conversation.
It is. That is a different conversation. But I want to say just right before we go to break, I agree with you. The poor American farmer, they work on such small margins. They're basically serfs at this point. It's the major corporations that have squeezed them. And I would love to see them have a new lease on life with planting other crops. Monocrops really ruin our soil. That gives us other carbon emission issues. So really, this conversation is all about being pro-farmer. This is about giving them a new lease to find new ways to make more money. And as an FYI, if you have lost Gen Z and you're a dairy farmer, dairy farmers know this, you work on such small margins, you can't survive. You can't lose an entire generation and then hope to be a solid business in dairy. The margins just aren't there. I hate to go to break, but I'm going to do it. We'll be right back with Bjorn right after break. It's Plant-Based Business Hour. I'm Elysabeth Alfano. Oh, it goes so fast. So much to talk to you about. Maybe we can get into the environment too as we head right back to the Plant-Based Business Hour. I'm Elysabeth Alfano. It's the Plant-Based Business Hour. Welcome back. I am here with the founder of Oatly, Bjorn Oste, and the founder and CEO of Good Idea Drinks. We've been talking about losing Gen Z, which no longer drinks dairy. And, you know, when you're concerned about your health and nutrition, it's not because you're 14. 14-year-olds can stuff their face with Doritos all day. It makes no difference. So this generation that they've lost, they're not doing it for nutrition. They're doing it because of the environmental benefits and the animal welfare benefits. And maybe and taste the creaminess that comes with oats, and also maybe that cool marketing, which is on the bus and on the bench, that Oatly does so well by engaging its younger generation. Your ads are always asking questions. Have you read this bus? Are you riding this bus? Are you, thanks for your time because we're all kind of bored waiting for the bus. These kinds of very engaging campaigns. But, environmentally, I don't know if we can talk a little bit about, compared to regular milk, what the environmental scenario looks like with plant-based milk, specifically oat milk, maybe.
The Oatly has commissioned a lot of studies on this, and I remember correctly now, it's about 1/7 of the water footprint. Actually, it's pretty much straightforward, right? It's about 1/7 of the aerial land used, so 1/7 of the water footprint, and also 1/7 of carbon dioxide emissions. So it's a dramatic improvement, right, on all those key areas, and it's better for oats than any comparable other plant-based raw material. I'd say nuts and seeds are particularly bad. Soy milk, obviously, soybeans is a whole nother story in its own right, with burning rainforests and GMO and all that stuff, right? But grains are superior as ingredients from an environmental point of view, for sure, in plant-based alternatives compared to any other alternative on the market today.
I don't think I fully realized that myself. I knew that almonds were water intensive, but I don't think I realized the environmental issue with soy. And I also thought that nuts perhaps gave off, were carbon sequestering sort of in their own right. Do I have that wrong?
I'm not the expert to answer in detail, right? But the water footprint on any nut product is disastrous. And of course, humans being so smart as they are, they decide to grow almonds in areas where there's no water in the first place, namely here in California. So the equation is really, I think 10% of the California total freshwater consumption in California goes to the almond plantations.
Yes, I did know that almonds are sort of the worst of the worst.
So and it's some brilliant politician came up with the idea of giving the farmers in Central Valley free water and to make them come here and start farming Central Valley in the 1940s and the 1950s, right? So any economist would tell you that if there's resources free, well, you're going to use it for the production that needs a lot of that free resource. And here we are.
And then here we are, right? Yes.
Yeah.
And then we have the repercussions of our actions and our decisions. So I will take this opportunity to say, vote, everyone, on November 3rd. Your actions do count. But something that we like to talk about a lot on this show is, yes, you vote every 4 years, but really you vote 3 times a day. You vote every time you take your dollars and you use those dollars towards an environmentally better product, a nutritionally better product, an animal welfare better product. You're voting for yourself, your health care, your kids, their future, so many good things. So if we watch TV, whether you are to the left or to the right, it does not matter. You probably look at everyone and saying, wow, all sides are pretty crazy. But you can take back some control for yourself. You can advocate for yourself. You have that friend Google. You can find out the things that are better for the environment and your health, and you can take your green dollar and you can use it on the things that matter for you. And I do promise you that when you align your purchasing power with your values, the things that matter to you, you will see a difference. And that's the difference that you're seeing with Oatly. We've talked about, it's better for the environment and it's better nutritionally. Fiber. You cannot be healthy without fiber. Meat and dairy have no fiber. Oatly has some fiber, which is so nice. Can't be healthy without fiber. But it's not just the nutrition. You've kind of upended how business is done, which is so very exciting. So my next question for you is, Oatly has upended and the plant-based milk sector as well as the milk sector with this new oat craze. I mean, I just saw a billboard for Dunkin' Donuts that said, we now have oat milk. So very exciting. But if you take even the next frontier, you and your brother are so scientifically motivated. How much is AI playing a role in what you're doing in your next endeavors with maybe good idea drinks, but even beyond that?
AI, artificial intelligence.
Yes. If any role at all, but I'm finding more and more scientists are looking to the phytonutrients found through AI to see how they can make food the best possible.
So I would say it has some element of importance in our world, right, in our universe, and I know other companies. You reference some ideas there that for them it matters a lot. I can say with good idea, for example, we get tangentially involved in the technology sector because there's now an onslaught of companies that are getting ready to launch devices that measure blood sugar without you having to prick your finger or slap a device on your arm, right?
Yes.
And I think it's a good idea. We're teaming up with new technology companies, and what can be part of is a little bit of a universe where you have a device that measures, you have a tool and good idea that help regulate blood sugar, but then you have potentially thousands and millions, if not millions, of users walking around and measuring their data points on a daily basis. And of course, there you start doing a lot of predictive analysis and looking at how can I help you more actively and predict, so Elysabeth, it looks like you're about to exercise now. Maybe you should think about this and that, or, and in that sense, so personalized health and nutrition, which inevitably is a big part of what we're doing. AI definitely will have a very key role in that space. And to some extent, we will be involved. We have, I can very quickly mention another project that we were working with in our food tech lab to give you an idea where things are going. We are actually developing, one of our companies now is a pharmaceutical company that is 100% food-based. And they are going into phase 3 studies now for pharmaceutical approval. And we have developed a beverage. It's actually a contrast medium and diagnostics tool for x-raying your bowel. And you can wonder how did you guys end up there? And that take me another 3 hours to explain that to you.
But I bet everybody wants that, actually. I think that everyone really wants to know what's in their bowels. They really do. It's very popular.
Well, there's hundreds of thousands of CAT scans and MRI exams of your bowel every day, right, across the world. And in order to get a big picture, you need to fill the bowel with a medium that doesn't distort the picture. And that medium, there are products out there today, they're awful, they taste bad, and they actually don't give very good contrast. And that was a long story, but a couple of medical experts approached us to see if we could help them solve that problem and make a better product. And because we were food scientists, we looked at how can we do that with the food. And that survives the stomach and that fills the bowel and doesn't have any side effects, and that tastes great, and you can produce it. The portions strictly controlled to comply with all the medical regulations. It's a pharmaceutical, so administered typically by a nurse in the clinic. So coming with food science background, we built this product, and because it gives such incredible contrast, it actually now is becoming a diagnostic tool, not just a constant medium. So there we're developing together with a partner a whole AI thing so we started off with us providing a cool drink to hospitals. Now we're providing not only the drink, but the dispenser, which is an Internet of Things connected dispenser that sits in the clinic that you push a button, you get a glass, and you can administer to the patient. And we're also building a software analysis tool for the MRI and CAT scans that take these images and give the doctor an instant, well, here's a lesion, here's a inflammation, here's a cancer.
Wow.
From a food company, food scientists, right? But it's interesting. So in that kind of what I love with food tech is that food tech is really the result of multidisciplinary engineering. And that's you need physics, biochemistry, medical expertise, and the whole the list goes on, right? And in nutrition and protein, enzyme technology, all these it's typically traditional silos of knowledge and expertise that never really communicated to each other in the past. And now the clue is to try to get these silos to integrate and talk to each other and optimize their knowledge bases and come up with the totally revolutionary new things. And I'm extremely upbeat about the opportunities and potential for food and food for nutrition and food for health and food as medicine.
I actually think that's the only way. And
Yeah.
it's in many ways, it surprises me that it took us this long to really make the connection that what you put in your body is basically determining how you're going to feel, the quality of your life, and the length of your life. I don't know why we lived for so many years, decades really, in disconnect with our food supply source, with our connection to food. I think I'll be a little jaded and say perhaps it's all those bad marketing campaigns, but I feel very optimistic in a time when maybe one might not be, but I feel very optimistic about finally finding the right path to solving these issues for ourselves. The only thing I would add is that I'd love to make sure that it becomes parallel with education, so that food as science doesn't get co-opted in the way that the natural food industry got co-opted. So now anyone can say it's natural, but that almost means nothing because the way it's been mismarketed. So I don't know if you have any feelings about that, how to keep control maybe is the word, from things going off the rails through marketing with their initial intentions.
Well, it's evolution, right? Somebody came with the idea of organic 20 years ago, and now if you're not organic, you don't count. So in some sense, that's a good thing, I guess, right? But then we've shifted the norms, and now we're looking for new norms, and I think that's it's inevitable, right? That we go there that way, you could see it. You could say it's been hijacked to a certain extent, but I don't know. It's ultimately I think it's a good thing.
Yes, I do too.
And of course, people are gonna. If you're a laggard and you have lots of money and you're like a Pepsi or Coke and you see your volumes go down, you're gonna try cut any corner you can to get back into the game. They start buying companies, and unfortunately, they seem to struggle to optimize. They fail after they bought them, and the legacy brands and legacy companies are struggling. It's a new world out there, and they have, I think, an internal structure that makes it hard for them to adopt. That'll be interesting. Some will.
Some will. We'll see. When Coca-Cola went into China, so when Coca-Cola bought up milk companies like Fairlife, which I thought was such an awful move for them, considering the scandals around animal abuse at Fairlife. Then they went into China, pushing milk to a country that historically has not had milk in their diet, which I thought I understand the market potential, but I thought very bad move. And then recently I realized they bought a plant-based milk company. So, it might take them a while, but ultimately I think they will get on the plant-based milk plan because you're going to have to adapt or die, very simply put. Speaking about adapting or die, I wonder if you could share with us, what do you wish you knew 10 years ago that you know now?
What do I wish I knew 10 years ago that I knew now? Well, I wish that I knew that Oatley would be, we would it's when we launched into the US, we obviously put the management team in the room and the whole board staring them down. And so, how much are you going to sell the first 3 years, right? And of course, it's an impossible question to answer. But we thought we made a big bet, and we under invested. I think we were off by a factor of 10. which led to the national oat milk short crisis that New York Times so famously wrote about in 2018, right? So with 2020 hindsight, had we known, we would have done very different investments, for example, and built bigger plants and be prepared. But
yes, right. Okay, hindsight being what it is.
But I think maybe on more serious level, I think we should have understood Gen Zs and their power and influence better earlier. That could have been interesting. But I'm a big fan of Gen Z. They are really saving the planet.
Yes, and I'm so grateful to them. So when we talk about Gen Z and what they're eating, a quick question about some of your other brands. So obviously we think of Oatly, so we think of the milk, but let me throw up an image here. Of course, we have ice cream, we have yogurt, if I'm saying that right, oatgurt, so yogurt. And then let's see, I've got some, let me get you the right thing here. We've got, look at those, those ice creams. So of course we have Oatly milk, but at least 12 different flavors of ice creams. Where do you see things other than the milk going? Like yogurt and plant-based cheese and plant-based ice cream, plant-based creamers? Where do you see the market going for that?
Well, all those categories are going to grow, right? And if you look at total plant-based in the US, milk is the most developed market, the white milk. And I don't talk about the bovine milk here, I talk about the plant milk.
Plant-based milk is 14% of the category.
Yeah, and I think I've seen numbers that are indicating even higher penetration, right? But it's growing. The penetration is growing, and that's not going to happen. But if you look at penetration of plant-based yogurts or plant-based ice creams, it's lower relative to dairy comparables, right? So there's no reason to believe that they shouldn't fill that gap. I think ice cream is probably the first to catch up. Quite simply because it's actually quite easy to make a good tasting ice cream, right? Anyone knows to see it's a lot of fat and a lot of sugar, and you'll win the game. So you'll see a lot of
works fat, for me.
Yeah, a lot of fat and sugar in plant-based, and they will, even if you have an almond or a soy or a cashew base that has a strong off-note or flavor, you can mask that with throwing in fruits and berries. Yogurts, however, is much, much more difficult, right? And there are, I can say, people will probably shoot me, but I still think there is really no plant-based yogurt that is as good as the best cow-based yogurt.
Oh. Yeah, I'd be one of those people.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly, I think, from my point of view, Oatly's new yogurt line here is actually really good, and comes from me, right? But I do believe that, and it's the first really strong contender. But it's, you take a really full fat yogurt and the artisanal made yogurt from cow milk. The dairy, plant-based dairy is not there yet, and certainly if you take that to the next dimension, and I mean cheese, right? They're not even on the map. And the reason for this is biochemistry and food chemistry, right? We don't have access to the right type of proteins. So humans have learned, and then there's another fun little side twist on milk. People think that humans have been drinking milk for thousands and thousands of years, right? Nothing could be more wrong. You go back, the modern milk industry was born in the 1930s. And why is this? Well, two things. We learned how to pasteurize and we learned how to build refrigerators. Before then, we had no chance of keeping milk and distributing it. So there was some milk consumed at the farm level, maybe for babies and young children. But in an unclean environment, it was very risky to give humans milk because you would get sick, very likely, right? From bacteria on the cow or whatever, right? There was no cleanliness, no hygiene, no way to keep and store. So what did humans do? Well, they did a couple of things. They're smart, those humans, right? And give them a few thousand years to figure out how to make really good yogurts, that they keep the milk for, 30, 60 days. You can keep it cool in a cave or in a dirt soil in a basement, right? Or you can make cheese. That's a way to preserving milk over a long period of time. You can make butter. So with those products, the farmers in the small, self-contained farmers in across the Western world, where we had dairy cows, perfected this, and we've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years to perfect how to make the best cheeses on the planet, right? Leave it to monks in France to forget some milk in a cave, and all of a sudden it turned into this incredible Roquefort cheese or whatever, right? So plant-based cheese makers or yogurt makers don't really have that legacy, right? We're starting from scratch, and we are deploying all the techniques that the dairy industry is using, but they don't work because we don't have the right protein structure or whatnot, right? And so we have a few years to work on that, to perfect that.
Yeah, I think fermentation is going to be a very interesting process there. You're seeing a lot of products come out now with fermented algae and mushroom mycelium. I think that's going to help plant-based cheese, which really is the next frontier. That's got to be addressed, captured, however you want to say. That market has to be, to make the impact on people that they need to switch over, which I believe they do, to a plant-based diet in full. You got to nail cheese. I will say from the yogurt perspective, though, I have not yet tried Oatgurt. So I'm going to try the Oatly. I'm going to do it. I have not yet.
Have to.
Okay. I have not yet tried it. But I have tried. Am I allowed to mention a competitor? May I do it?
If you whisper.
Okay. Okay. I like lava from the peely nut. And then there's an Israeli company that is not yet to market that is doing yogurt with chickpeas. And it's very interesting. It's very, very interesting. So I wait to see what the chickpea brings us. But I do like the peely nut, which gives you the creaminess of lava yogurt. Okay. I know your time is so tight today. A couple really quick questions on your way exit out. Let's go over some tips. Now, a lot of people think because you have launched a brand that, 25 years in the making, but seemingly was an instant success, that I would ask you for tips for entrepreneurs, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to ask you for tips for CEOs, because as we mentioned earlier, one of your famed quotes is, if you're inflexible, you're going to kill creativity. And so maybe you have words for large scale companies, the Coca-Colas of the world, to help those CEOs really transition to the new frontier. Because we wouldn't mind, from the plant-based perspective, we wouldn't mind their distribution lines, and we wouldn't mind their advertising dollar budgets, but CEOs maybe need to get with the program. What tips would you give for them?
Well, it's obviously far for me to give the CEO of Coke tips, but I think I think one thing that I have learned from the current Oatly team, and that's how consumers look at brands, right? And I think we had, certainly when we launched a broader and the new, the new lifestyle approach back in 2014, really, when we relaunched Oatly, if you like. That it's not about, the brand is not about putting a pretty sticker on a carton and cool advertising and get a famous rapper or a Hollywood star to, or fancy jingle or whatever. It really is about a life truly living, breathing, eating being who you say you are.
Yes.
And
Gen Z smells that a mile away.
Oh,
so
yeah. Nobody wants brands. Nobody, they want something they can associate themselves with and they can trust and has a meaningful message, right? And that's why also the legacy brands have such an incredible uphill with Gen Z now, of course, because they're toast in that game. I mean, they built the last 40, 50 years of success on being exactly a pretty sticker and an image, without soul, without real message, without authenticity. And now they're all, I think I love what Oatly is doing in challenging the incumbents with transparency. For example, Oatly decided very early on to be extremely transparent on what kind of ingredients they use and their environmental impact on a product level and whatnot. And those are typically things that the food industry have, that would consider like giving away their crown jewels and secrets. And I think there's incredible, the biggest challenge the big food companies have today is consumer distrust. Nobody trusts them for anything. doesn't matter if they turn around and do the best thing and are super honest, and they have a legacy. Who would ever trust anything coming out of Nestle after all the milk scandals in the past?
I couldn't agree more. Yes.
Right?
And the nefarious activities.
It doesn't matter what Nestle does.
Mm-hmm.
They can do anything. They burnt their brand in that sense, right? And I think that's also why you see a lot of the new, the legacy brands. They have to buy up companies and let them stay alone and independent, and then because
you're seeing this. Yeah. You're seeing this a lot. You're seeing Maple Leaf Foods, a meat company out of Canada. They bought Light Life, but they keep it very separate under something called Greenleaf Foods. And the same is true for JBS, the largest meat producer in the world. They have a company now called Plantera. And every time there's an executive from Plantera, all they do is say how much they're not affiliated with JBS. Yeah. They can't distance themselves enough. I want to thank Tom Vincel for saying, I don't trust these companies. I don't want them in. And I think, you're saying that, Bjorn, exactly. The trust is just not there. I do want to be respectful of your time because I know you have to go. So I'll just say one word answer. You are running around crazy like you are today. What is your favorite snack?
My favorite snack? Pistachio nuts, I guess, or macadamia nuts.
Ooh, nice fat in both of those, and so very tasty. I want to thank everybody for being with me on the Plant-Based Business Hour. It's been so fun to have the founder of Oatly, Bjorn Oste, and the founder and CEO of Good Idea Drinks with me. The Plant-Based Business Hour is live to you every week. Just join me next week, everybody. And if you have any questions, you can always go to ElysabethAlfano.com and find us on all the socials. Everyone, I will see you on Thursday. Bjorn, stay put for 2 seconds. Bye, everybody. Have a great day.